Sound check. Check one, check two.
Hello, good sir.
Hello, glad to be here.
It is so good to be with you. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I truly am humbled by the fact that you have joined us on your birthday. Of all days that you could have joined us, when you first told me that it would be your birthday, I thought, oh, is that going to be okay? And you were fine. Yeah, no, it'll be fine. You just chiming in from your son's house in Minnesota, is that right?
Right, in Minneapolis area.
Minneapolis area, right. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking time out at the end of your birthday. And is it Mother's Day in the US?
It is.
It is.
This is the right. Yep.
There you go. Well, happy Mother's Day to all of
I
all
was
of the
apparently
moms.
born on Mother's Day, which is interesting.
Well, and right, okay, which wouldn't, or your birthday wouldn't always fall on Mother's Day,
No.
but there you go.
No.
Okay, well, you were a special gift then, weren't you, to your mother? Yeah, fantastic. And do you know, it's been since we've had you on the show before, but it was 2018 when you were last on the show.
How
Isn't
did
that
happen?
I don't know. Like that's COVID certainly robbed us of 2 or 3 years, and so I think that sort of
Right.
sped things up. But I'm sorry that it's taken us so long to get you back. It's
Well,
mind you, you are a very busy gentleman. I know you no longer teach full time, but we were talking prior to the show, and you've got, what did you say? You've got over 30 scheduled appearances, and
it's been about averaging about 30 a year presentations of various sorts at universities and voice teacher gatherings and so forth. And I do some online teaching, but I retired from my university post in 2019.
yeah, right.
And so since then it's mostly been voice teachers and young professionals that want to explore the acoustics piece.
Yeah,
To find their way to me. I wasn't trying to build a studio particularly, but I'm happy to share, what I think I've noticed in my career, and if there's interest, then I'm there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's safe to say that there is a lot of interest in that space, and certainly interest in receiving, direct tuition from yourself. In fact, I noticed just recently that you were last week when we were on the show. I was telling everyone, I was waxing lyrical about you, Ken, and telling everyone, the level of, pedagogue that you are, internationally acclaimed and respected. I was telling everyone that you'd recently received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and we had to look this up before the show, didn't we? From the new CCM Vocal Pedagogy Institute at Shenandoah College.
Yes.
What did that include? What were they able to do for you?
It actually will happen this summer. I mean, they've awarded it to me, but I will go there and I will present some of my work while I'm there. They have a 9-day workshop where they're teaching CCM pedagogy and other things, and I'll be in the middle of that, and I'll present my pedagogy, and they'll honor me with that award while I'm there. But yeah, I don't know how they determine those things. I'm flattered that they considered me worthy of that, and I also told them I hope I have a little bit of lifetime yet to go, but it should be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. I expect to learn a lot of things while I'm there too.
There would not be a person in our community, our worldwide community of singing teachers, who would disagree with the honour that is being bestowed upon you, and it's certainly well deserved. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I think that's wonderful, because you have contributed so much to our collective understanding around voice, and in particular around acoustics and resonance, and we're going to sort of dive into that today. I did want to draw people's attention to, have you still only got 2 books?
Yes, and the green one is now
Oh,
Kinesthetic
that's
Voice
the green one.
Pedagogy 2.
Yes.
There's a second edition that's about twice as long as that one.
Yes, because that
came
one's a
out
bit thinner.
2021, Scott had me do a second edition, and I needed to make some adjustments in it. So, and yeah.
Well, I think that's, yeah, sorry.
The first one is now carried by Roman and Littlefield. Because Pendragon is no longer there, Pendragon Press, but Roman and Littlefield carries the first one.
I wanna kick off because this is, in fact, I was talking to a student this morning, and she's actually in Canada, and she made the point that she was looking forward to watching today's show and my interview with you, because she basically said what I think many of us feel, and that is the area of acoustics and resonance is a very challenging one to wrap your head around, you know, as a singer. I wonder whether we can start in a slightly unusual place in our conversation. And if I can ask you, and this perhaps will lay the foundation for how we move forward, what do you think are the main misconceptions about vocal tract resonance, and particularly amongst singers? What do you think the main ones are?
I guess I would start by saying, what is the source of voice? And if we start there, voice occurs in response to the visceral impulse to express feelings. This is from our ancient history. And so actually, because of that, expression of feeling organizes everything about voice. So if we're thinking about resonance, expression will actually accomplish a good bit of that for us if it's well done. And to qualify that, you can't just tell someone, well, just be emotional and your voice will work. That's not exactly what I mean. But expression determines onset. If I go, yeah, it causes a coup de grace onset. It tunes the resonance to express the colors of the feeling that I'm trying to convey. And we do that, humans do that to get their tribe or other caregivers or other people to feel what they are feeling. So its primary purpose is that, to convey feelings, to get this bonding to happen between humans. So really, a lot of resonance will be taken care of by doing that well. I'll throw out a couple of other things in that relation. Ingo Tietze wrote a wonderful article in the Journal of Singing in which he made this statement: synergistic biological systems, those are fancy words for interactive living things like us, synergistic biological systems tend to self-organize for efficiency if given appropriate output targets, and if they have sufficient flexibility to explore solutions for those targets. What does that all mean?
Because that's quite the mouthful.
Right. So output targets are just, what is it you're trying to do? Well, you're trying to express feelings, okay, and you need sufficient flexibility, meaning your life experience hopefully has not so traumatized you that you're all bound up and unable to explore options to solve those output targets, to express yourself freely and fully. So how do these synergistic biological systems know when they've hit on efficiency? He didn't say this, but I add this in. And it's kind of a duh. Pleasure. You're satisfyingly expressive in a way that feels good. Pleasure is a reliable diagnostic for efficiency. If it doesn't feel good, it is not efficient. If it feels good, it's efficient. So if there's a misconception, it's trying to do something fancy and strange or odd instead of taking advantage of that deep level programming. And I'll carry that even further. I now make this statement. Well, it's a little bit hyperbolic, but it's worth thinking about. Language is the problem. Expression is the solution. Now, what do I mean by that? Language came later. This thing is built, designed by nature, by God, whatever your point of view is on that, to express feelings for the sake of bonding and getting needs met. Language evolved later. And we get our output targets, those output targets Tietze was writing about, from a very narrow speech range. And then we expect the sounds and sensations of that speech range language to stay the same up and down the range. And there are good acoustic reasons and physical reasons why that can't be the case. So language is at least the challenge, and I would say it's actually the problem. And you have to understand, I love language. Why be a singer if you don't love language? I love language, but it's actually the problem, and expression is the solution. So trying to maintain the same color vowel and the same sensation of that vowel up and down the range is the problem. Allowing expression to guide you through all of the necessary migrations of sound and sensation across range is the solution. So if I take an ah, I go ah. I'm not going to chase ah, ah. I let it migrate. The sound migrates, the sensation migrates, where I feel the sensation migrates, everything migrates. And I do that by expression. Ah. You have to forgive my 73-year-old voice. After it's 10 o'clock at night here, and I drove all day, so it's tired and on top of all that. But anyway, then another key piece to that is, it's universal to perceive, for humans to perceive brightness as forward and dark as back. I have opinions as to why that's the case, but as far as I know, everybody feels it that way. Feels like the bright's forward and dark is back. Unfortunately, that misleads resonance tuning. Vowels are made up of two tone colors that come from a lower resonance and a higher resonance, that first formant and a second formant. And that lower one is warmer and darker, and the higher one in pitch, I say lower and higher in pitch, not necessarily in where you feel it. The higher one is brighter, and more often than not, the higher one carries the target identity of the vowel. I use a childlike whisper to model all of this. Very quickly, it goes like this. I'm thumping so that you hear the lower color and the higher color. Well, our tendency, because most vowels are defined by that higher color, except for U and O, and the higher color is the brighter one. Higher is brighter, lower is darker to our perception. We tend to try to put the bright part of the vowel in the front of the mouth, E-A-A, that raises the larynx and constricts things. And we say, oh, well, let's make that more classical. I'll put dark in the back, E-A-A-A. That depresses the larynx. Neither of those are good options for any genre, classical or otherwise. If you put bright in the back, E-A-A-A, E-A-A-A, using expression, and put the warm part of the sound in the front, it takes a little bit of messing with to understand what I mean by the warm part of the sound. But for example, for an ah, sounds kind of like an I think the to the front, rather than thinking ah, I think ah. I imagine that the is to the front and the bright ahs in the back, and I get a balanced resonance. So that's a very common and very understandable misperception, because it's completely natural and universal to perceive bright as forward and dark as back.
Yeah.
But,
well, we
we
often talk about it like that, don't we? You know, bringing a brightness into the forward mask and those sorts of metaphorical expressions.
Right. Here's my recommendation on that, and people can disagree if they like. if you're going to put anything in the, I talk about the over-vowel and the under-vowel. The over-vowel is the higher, brighter color. The under-vowel is a lower, darker color. It's not about where you feel them. It's about where they are in pitch. Higher is over, under-vowel is lower. I say put the under-vowel in the mask. If you're going to put anything in the mask, put the under-vowel in the mask. I'll give you another example. E, the E is the high E, but the the E is the color of the under-vowel. It's an U mixed with E, so it sounds kind of like a capital Y if you know the IPA. E. I can put that E to the front all I like. If I go E, it will tighten me. If I go E, it won't. E. So you can put the under-vowel as forward as you like up in here in the mask, and it'll be very easy in the neck. And you don't put the dark part of the vowel in the back. If you put the dark part of it in the back, you'll get that pretentious fake opera singer sound that I don't like in opera singers. That's my main gig was training classical.
Yeah.
But I want E, A, not E, A, nor do I want E, A. E, A is a balance of the highs and the lows of the sound, of the brights and the dark parts of the sound. So those are some of the things that I think are misconceived by us, by beginners.
How do we take that then forward into, taking that understanding of vocal acoustics into our performance? What's the road to that for a beginner singer?
Well, I mean, what I do with for classical singers, but I would do this to some extent with anyone, because training acoustic efficiency is useful regardless of your genre.
Yeah.
And you can make different choices about what your targets are going to be.
Yeah.
Like if you want a brighter target, you can choose a brighter target if your genre calls for that, but you want to get it very efficiently. And efficiency basically means you're getting a lot of output for very comfortable, pleasurable process and input. So I work on helping singers find the natural migrations of sound and sensation across range. That means you have to understand how a vowel is going to migrate across range. Vowels have these two colors I mentioned, a target color and then a complementary color. The lower pitched color is usually the complementary color, and it's a warmer, rounder, to some extent more neutralizing color. And the target color is a clearer, brighter, higher color. So when you go up the range, vowels tend to migrate more towards their complementary color. So an ah is going to have more in it. Ya, not ya, ya. Every vowel will have its complementary color. And and I will work the range till they find it. And I will use expression and playfulness, and particularly sort of fun caricature things. Help them find the migrations of how the vowel is going to migrate, how they feel the sound is going to migrate. Open timbre, which is an acoustic register I talk about, the Italians called it voce aperta, buzzes in the mouth and seems a little bit more direct and exposed. Closed timbre, they say it's closed or covered, only because it feels more internal and vertical, and a good bit of the sensation moves above the palate. So it doesn't stay in the mouth. If it stays in the mouth, you're going to end up yelling. And when you go to closed timbre, the sensation, part of the sensation goes up above your palate, and some of it settles down into the body. So where you feel sound migrates across range. So I worked all of those migrations so that things feel easier in the neck. And that's part of it. And always using expression as a motive. And there are a lot of fun expressions you can use. I use caricatures. I use a lot of childlike expressions. Why childlike? Well, they're less messed up. Okay, they're more pure. They're more pure emotion with their voices. They haven't been as constrained by, socialization and so forth. And animal sounds. Howling is a great thing to play with, especially if you imagine that the animals that howl are self-soothing. They're soothing them. They're soothing their throats as they as they howl up. They're not doing anything that doesn't feel comfortable. So, yeah, I worked all those migrations of sound and sensation. Here's another one that's from acoustics. Low-pitched sounds, basically sounds that have a lot of high frequency content, particularly high numbered harmonic content, have a buzziness to them. This is from Ian Howell's work. A lot of this is incorporating Ian Howell's work on spectral tone, color, and auditory roughness. So when you sing a low pitch, you have a lot of closely clustered harmonics within formants that are getting resonated and sent out into radiated out into the world. So those sounds are very buzzy. Basses are very buzzy. The higher you are, those very closely clustered high-numbered harmonics, starting at about harmonic number 6 and on up, begin to fall out of our strongest hearing range. They're off the end of the piano, really where our hearing is getting weaker. So higher pitches sound rather smoother. Basically, the take-home of this is, as you go from low to high in any voice type, you want your low voice to sound buzzier, and it gradually migrates to a more refined sizzle to smooth by the top. If you're a really low voice, you may not get all the way to smooth, like basses, unless they're doing a deliberate falsetto effect, always have a little bit of buzz or sizzle in their high voice. If you're really high voice, you may be mostly smooth with a little bit of buzzy at the bottom, but you want to go from buzzy to smooth, and that's another migration, another necessary migration across range that helps train the larynx to do the right thing.
I want to, my brain is spinning so fast. There's so many questions that you are, throwing out for ones like myself. I want to come back to something just to quickly ask after it. You made the point earlier that efficiency is always met with it feeling right. To paraphrase,
pleasurable. It's
pleasurable.
It's easy and it's pleasurable. It feels good. It's self-soothing.
In my teaching, what is interesting, because I completely understand and agree with what you're saying there, because it's self-evident. What's interesting though is often what a person has established as their set normal is what feels comfortable, and yet that is not necessarily going to be the most efficient. And so I wondered whether you could help us bridge that small issue.
Sure. So obviously what you're used to, you may not know how good it can feel.
Yeah.
All right. And I'll often ask someone, how does that feel? And they're not sure at first, and I say, and I try to be very specific. I'm interested in whatever you want to tell me, but I'm particularly interested in, does it feel pleasurable, soothing to do, or does it feel, a little bit effortful and uncomfortable, or a lot?
Yeah.
So they have to think about that a little bit to figure it out, and they might, they might feel uncomfortable psychologically with it because it's a sound they're not used to making, and it's a new and different sensation. They should really try to decide, does it feel physically good? Does it feel physically comfortable? Not do you like the sound, not, is it new or strange or different? Does it feel physically comfortable? Because that's your guide that you can keep doing it and it won't irritate your tissues.
Yeah.
Let me throw out another thing that's kind of really interesting about why, I do this lecture, why bother with acoustic pedagogy? A lot of the things I've already just mentioned. Harm Schutte, who is Donald Miller's science colleague that did their research in Groningen, in his dissertation, when he was doing his doctorate, his PhD, he measured that the acoustic energy in the vocal tract and a resonant sound is 30 decibels stronger or more intense than the sound that makes it out of the mouth. 30 decibels, that's 10 to the power of 3. 10 times
Wow.
10 times 10. That's 1,000 times more intense. 30 decibels is 1,000 times more intense.
Wow.
Brad Story, who's a wonderful researcher at the University of Arizona, I just had a conversation with him. I was in Arizona for 6 weeks, and I went to see him to talk about this. He says it this way: 90 to 99% of the energy generated stays in the vocal tract.
99%.
90 to 99, so only
90
1
to
to
99.
10%.
Wow.
Only 1 to 10% makes it out. Now, what is that energy doing in there? It's, you could say it's reverberating back and forth, it's echoing back and forth, because a wave goes to the lips, turns around, heads, most of the energy turns around, heads back to the glottis, and so back and forth, back and forth. Back. Well, what do you think all that power is doing in there? It's either helping or hindering your vibrator.
Yes.
And if you get it well tuned, it is significantly helping your vibrator put out a lot of power, because you got to put out a lot of power to get that, whatever that smaller percentage is that makes it out of your mouth, if you're doing acoustic singing without amplification.
Yes.
Now, if you're singing with amplification, it doesn't have to be super powerful. Your engineer can take care of that for you with the miking. But still, you want it to be pleasurable so that you can do 8 shows a week or whatever you're doing without, irritating your cords.
Yeah.
So why bother with acoustic pedagogy? It can teach you how to tune the resonances to maximize that power, make use of that power so that it's helping your vibrator. And if you help your vibrator, that will change your respiration.
Yeah.
But if it's fighting your vibrator, everything is unstable, and then you have to recruit more effort to fight the fight that's going on with that powerful resonation.
Yeah. I often refer to that that concept that you just referred to as acoustical overloading of the vocal folds, because it's in a sense hindering that forward development of sound, and thus quashing, I guess, or dampening the oscillatory behavior, isn't it?
It at least destabilizes it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one other thing about this is related to this. I consider this the key to vocal health. We often talk about don't use so much breath pressure. Well, actually, that's not the most accurate way to talk about it. If you're doing a very loud sound, we know from science a loud sound requires higher pressure levels. Why doesn't it feel like higher pressure levels when you do it well? The pressure is not just the sheer breath pressure in your lungs. Air flows from higher pressure to lower pressure. So air is going to be flowing that way. We make higher pressure in the lungs than what's above the glottis. What we're really talking about is something called the transglottal pressure difference. And that's the difference between the pressure developed in the lungs with some compression of the torso versus the pressure in the vocal tract. We assume that the pressure in the vocal tract is atmospheric pressure. But if you've got sound going on in there, you actually can generate back pressures so that there's a separate level of pressure in the vocal tract than atmospheric pressure. So the transglottal pressure difference is the difference in pressure from below your glottis to above your glottis, the average pressures. And if you can raise the pressure in your vocal tract with good acoustic tuning so that you've got effective back pressure, you can use a lot of pressure in your lungs for a powerful sound and meet it with almost as high a pressure in your vocal tract, and your vocal folds feel very comfortable. Now I'm going to use some very funny numbers, and this is just a truthy model, but to understand it. Say if we call atmospheric pressure 0, we know it isn't, it's more than that, but it's the water we swim in, so we don't notice it, right? So it feels like 0. Say I need a 5. I'm just using kind of arbitrary numbers to model this. So if I go from 5 to 0 across my glottis, that's a 5. My vocal folds, the glottal resistance, can deal a 5 very comfortably. What if I'm a held in tenor singing a high note and I need a 30? If I can, with acoustic means, generate a 25 back pressure in my vocal tract, 30 to 25 is still a 5. I maintain that my vocal folds can't tell the difference between going from 5 to 0 and going from 30 to 25. Feels the same. Why? It takes the same amount of glottal resistance. It's just 5. It's a 5. I'm good with the 5. So learning how to play the acoustics of your tubing effectively can allow you to build up a lot of power and feel like you're singing very easily. The American tenor Richard Tucker, who had this amazing stentorian top, one of the more powerful tops, swore that his top notes were in falsetto. When people ask him about his top notes, well, I sing those in falsetto. Well, nobody believes that he sang those in falsetto if you hear him sing, but that's what it felt like to him. It felt that easy because he had figured out how to tune the resonances so that all that power going back and forth in there was assisting the vibrator in a way that made it feel very easy at the glottis. So the problem is this: if you have too great of a transglottal pressure difference, the vocal folds have two jobs. One is they're resisting pressure and flow and pressure.
Yes.
They're a valve closing, resisting the flow and pressure, and the other is to shape for pitch. They're changing their thickness, length, and tautness, how taut they are to create pitch. The more energy they have to expend resisting pressure and flow, the less flexibility they have for shaping for pitch. So keeping the transglottal pressure difference comfortably narrow by good acoustic tuning frees them to make your full range comfortably of pitches. And how do you know when you have an appropriately low transglottal pressure difference? Feels easy in the neck. It feels easy. It feels pleasurable. Duh.
Duh. There are two things that kind of easily come out of what you've just said. I want to talk about vocal registration, which is, the big topic to come out of that. Before we do, can I just ask after what influence is morphology going to have on this for every individual? Like the different shapes, sizes, dimensions of vocal tracts, vocal folds, laryngeal. What impact does that have for us?
Well, the morphology, I would say, largely determines the sort of overall timbral options that you have. The general ones, like there's a bari sax and there's a soprano sax. They're just different size tubings, right? But they can play all the pitches of the range that their instrument can play, right? So that will vary a little bit. So longer, bigger tubes are going to be deeper timbred singers, but all of them have quite a lot of flexibility for shaping. And most of the pitches that we use for vowels, for example, are high range frequencies, and they're within our the shapeable range of everybody. When I do the chiaroscuro whisper, I happen to know that's B, A, G, D, B, A, G. It's B6, A66, all the way down to B, A, G5. Well, those frequencies are available to every kind of voice. And every kind of voice has enough flexibility of tongue shaping that we can all target those frequencies. We will there'll be a little bit of variability in how we're shaping to target those frequencies, but we have enough flexibility of the tubing to be able to target those frequencies and create those vowels. And I'm suggesting that we can, if we want, that's a particular classical set of vowels, classically tuned. You can tune them from other genres as well, but at any rate, they're a function of the pronunciations that I've chosen for that set of vowels. I could do a brighter set of vowels with slightly higher pitched targets if I wanted to do that for a particular genre. So there's flexibility to tune for the vowels that you want regardless of the voice type within certain limits. We learned also from Ian's great work on spectral tone color that frequencies have a tone color. And a given vowel requires the prominence of a frequency that bears the tone color of the vowel you're going for. And some vowels have fairly narrow frequency bands, and some vowels have very wide frequency bands. Oo, C5 all the way down is all oo. E, C7 up is all E. Okay, there's a lot, you know, there's about a fourth of the various kinds of ahs, depending on which ah you want, if you want a dark ah or a bright ah. But some of the vowels have very narrow frequency bands that will sound like the vowel you're going for. So we target those by shaping, and we just learned how to do that, you know, probably by imitation as we were developing language skills. But all voices have those. If you're at a certain high pitch, eventually you are out of range of some vowel colors. For example, a treble voice singing above C5, there's no oo paint left. You're now in O paint, O and O and ah paint, and you're faking an oo. It's amazing how well you can fake an oo above C5, but there's no true, pure, low dark oo paint left above C5. Meaning the frequency, there are no frequencies that sound like, you know, they're higher colored frequencies. So treble voices, eventually there's some vowels that they can't execute in a speech-like manner. They're just too high. There's no, but non-treble voices, I have no excuse. Tenors, basses, baritones, we have access to all the vowel colors. We have no excuse for not being able to do them. They're possible. Anyway,
So
I sort of went off on that.
no, that it's all, I find all of this extremely fascinating. But I'm recognizing that we've only got about 10 minutes left. I do.
We teach week-long courses on this.
Yeah, I
at
know.
least.
I know.
I got one in Michigan this
and
summer.
here we are trying to fit it into 40 minutes.
Right.
But I think my audience will not forgive me if I don't ask after the whole vocal registration and how acoustics interplay on that registration of the voice. You know, can you? I'm asking you to do the impossible. Explain it in 10 minutes or less.
Sure. Well, you need to know really just two things. You need to know where the lowest resonance of the set of vowels you're using is. They're always in contact with the treble clef pretty much, from just below the treble clef to about the top of the treble clef. So if that would be the and it's, you know, E and Oo are near the bottom of the treble clef, Ah is near the top of the treble clef, A and O is at about C, B, B flat, C, 5, and A is about E flat for treble voices. If you know what that pattern is, that's the one thing that you need to know. It's pretty easy to learn that set once you look at the charts, and I've got free charts on my website you can download. Then the other thing you need to know is just the lowest few intervals of the harmonic series. Everybody knows that the fundamental and the second harmonic's an octave higher, third harmonic's an octave and a fifth higher, fourth harmonic's 2 octaves. Acoustic registers have entirely to do with the pitch you're singing and its set of harmonics and their relationship to that lowest resonance. So if this is my lowest resonance, and I do it like this, say this is the pitch I'm singing and this is the harmonic set. However many harmonics are at or below that resonance will determine your acoustic register. This is whoop timbre. I'm singing the pitch of that resonance. That's most of whoop timbre occurs mostly in the top half of the treble clef and higher. E and Oo can start lower, but A and O and on up, everything there. Then there's an octave between these first two harmonics, so that whole octave below whoop timbre is close timbre. Close timbre is when I'm less than an octave below that first resonance on the vowel I'm singing. So then, once that second harmonic drops below that first resonance, now I'm in open timbre. And these others are just more increasingly open, buzzy open timbre. Open, 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 close, 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 whoop. Then if I want to sing higher, I need to raise the resonance with the pitch I'm singing to track whoop timbre higher. That's formant tracking at that point. and they're, you know, that once you know where you are on a particular vowel relative to those things, it's pretty easy to know where you know, which of those acoustic registers you're in. And this is the interesting thing that I also maintain. There are laryngeal registers. You know, we've talked about those forever. People used to think that registers were completely laryngeal. Nope, there are laryngeal registers. But there are acoustic registers depending on where you are relative to the, you know, and that change, the acoustic registers change with each vowel. Why? Because these resonances change, you know, e, a, o, o. You know, so you could be on the same pitch and in different acoustic registers depending on what vowel you're singing. They have sensations, and I describe those sensations. They have sounds that go with them. Whoop timbre, or down a little called it hoot, is what people woo woo. You know, that's that really whooping kind of a sound. Open timbre is more brash and, you know, buzzier. Closed timbre is a sort of I call closed timbre what a lot of contemporary styles call mix. It's an in-between sizzly thing that's not wide open, but it's also not that rounded operatic whoop either.
Yeah.
It's a sizzle in between. Yeah, and closed timbre is very important. Mix is very important, right? It's not really clearly a laryngeal register, although there are laryngeal behaviors that go along with it, but it's mostly an acoustic phenomenon, and the sound sensation is above your palate. If it's still mostly in your mouth, it's open timbre, and you're going to be risking a raw yell, which is very wearing on the voice. But if you can get that high thing, and one of the tricks you will see a lot of great performers of CCM doing, I call it the eye squint nose scrunch, or the hell yeah damn right affect. It has a very high tongue dorsum, and you see this look, yeah, 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 yeah. I'm being a little quiet. My wife's trying to sleep in the next room over. It's late here where I am. But that's closed timbre, and it's above the palate. It's not yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, 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 yeah. High tongue dorsum, and you'll see gospel singers. And you think, you know, some classical teachers might see that and say, oh, look at all that tension. No, it's a very effective acoustic strategy. And it isn't about what's going on the face.
No.
The face is responding to an affect that's inside out.
Yeah.
And the head goes back. It doesn't go forward.
No.
And it really gets the sound to sit above the palate, where it takes the, you know, keeps the transglottal pressure difference comfortable.
Wow. I love that bit. I mean, there is so much. I will be re-watching today's interview just so I can go through and make my notes and really, because we've had you on the show before, as we said at the beginning, back in 2018, but just the even in that period of time, that 6 years, there's just so much more that you're bringing out of this area now, which is just so exciting.
We keep learning, so it's lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning, yeah. Well, I'm learning heaps.
And my you call it, I think you like to call it popular styles culture, popular culture.
Popular culture styles, PCM, yeah.
Right.
Popular culture music.
Popular culture music, or CCM.
Yeah.
My CCM colleagues probably keep dragging me, not exactly kicking and screaming, into that area because they want to apply the acoustics. You know, they say, oh no, this is completely applicable. You just have different output targets.
Yeah.
But you still want it to be efficient enough to not wear the voice out. You can use the engineer and the mic, but you still want to have some power. So yeah.
Efficiency, I say to my gigging singers, my students all the time, efficiency is actually where it's at. That's everything. You know, when you're gigging 4 or 5 nights a week and having to do 3 and 4 sets a night, efficiency is premium. We got to get that right first, pretty much before anything else. The reason you're already gigging is because you sound great. Okay, well we got to keep that in play, But now we've got to make it efficient. We've got to be able to have you do it night after night after
over
night.
and over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And so, yeah, in the contemporary model, it's that's why this is so important, and which is why I'm so grateful to you, sir, for joining us on your birthday of all days, and at the end of Mother's Day. And so I hope Joanne, please wish Joanne a happy Mother's Day. Who hopefully hopefully she is pushing some Z's by now.
Yep.
And it's been so great to have you.
Well, and I hope someday I can get to your side of the globe. That would be lovely if I could.
That would be
get to Australia
awesome.
at some point.
That would be awesome. And as you and I discussed before the show, I'm very much looking forward to catching up once again in person, in Canada, Toronto,
right.
for the next ICVT. But I'll have to wait until that moment for that pleasure, because we're out of time now, I'm afraid. The time goes quick, especially when I'm listening to someone like yourself. So thank you, Ken, for coming onto the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure was all ours, everyone, wasn't it? Make sure you hit that like button, pound the like button, because that was awesome. Like that, seriously, you've got to go back and listen to that again. That was rich with content, so rich with content, and how gracious and generous of Ken to do that on his birthday. Amazing. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. Next week we are going to come back with for a Q&A, and where you ask your questions and I do my humble best to answer said questions. And then in 2 weeks' time, we've got Dr. Shannon Coates coming on. Dr. Shannon has been on the show many, many, many times. She's a good friend, and it'll be good to have her chime in. And we're going to chew the fat for like we just did with Ken for about 40-50 minutes. So make sure you subscribe and hit the white bell icon. Just make sure you don't miss a show. I very much look forward to seeing you again next week. I hope you have a great week. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.